So I've done a bunch of videos of me playing closed non-combo versus other players, but I wanted to do a ground-up version of kind of building up the theory. And I've covered some of this before, but I thought it might be nice to have in one place of the core concepts of how it works and why, building up from kind of core starting concepts. So in this game where each side has all 10s on all their cards, I have all rules except for combo on. Anyone can take any time they want to, right? This is going to be a same wall. They're going to be sames. This is also technically a plus as well. Means we'll be able to capture in any scenario except for ones like this, where captures are not guaranteed anyway. Not that, of course, captures are guaranteed, but we're first going to start by looking at an all capture version and just talking about the positions and what the strategy should be. The core conclusion, however, I'll just give away from the start, is that first turn playing correctly wins by force. So a first turn starts, say, in the center, and second turn goes here. First turn cannot secure a card. They cannot make any move that locks in a card, right? Any card after we play will at least have one thing facing it to take back. So we should make a move, because this game is all about securing cards, that does not allow our opponent to secure any cards. So here would be a mistake, because they can be the first to lock in. Here would be a mistake, because we give them this square for free. It locks in itself. Here would be fine. Here would be fine. Here would be fine. Here would, of course, be a mistake, because it gives this square. And this would be a mistake, because they get to lock in first from this square. So the winning moves for red are going to be here, here, and here. 6, 8, and 9. We can see how one would continue. For instance, here, if they go here, we can be the first to secure a card. We can do that two different ways, but one of them secures two cards. So we're going to play here, which secures the card we just took in 3 and also the card in 2. It doesn't matter so much that we flip the card in 1. They can flip that back if wanted. But we can see that even though in this position they're up 6-4, we've secured 2 cards as red. They've secured 1. This is going to be a win. We can win it multiple ways. We can win it by going in 8, and we're guaranteed the extra captures at the end to win 6-4. We can also win it by going in either corner, doesn't matter which. If they play badly, we win by more. If they play well, we still win 6-4. If they go here, same concept, we're going to secure 2 cards. We could also secure 1 card, but in reply, they get to secure 2. And you'll notice if we play this one out, it does not lead to a win, it leads to a tie. So as soon as we make one mistake, the second turn player can earn a tie, right? It takes 2 mistakes for them to win. This would be the correct move, and you can play it out. Say they go here this time, we're going to end up with a win. If they go here, we have 2 winning moves. One is to enter the T. It's sideways here, but that secures a card. Another is actually the Z works too, though a little more complicated, but the T would be the kind of standard way to win this, and the Z a secondary option. If they go here, there's only one way to secure a card. It's to play securely. We get another T. If they go here, only one way to secure a card. This is a Q formation. And if they go here, we can win 2 ways. One is to go into the Q, where we secure a card, and another is the Z or S, again, is good enough to win this. Going through a few other patterns of play. If they play an aside, we can win by any move that doesn't let second turn secure. So 7, 8, or 9 will all work. If 7, we enter the J setup, which is the one we just looked at from a different move order. 8 gets us the line, which also works, and you could see could easily lead to a T, could also lead to a Z or S, and could lead to the only winning move here. Can you find it? It's the plus. It's the only move that secures a card. Weirdly, 5 is the first card to be secured here, but it all works. So that's, you can see a center works. It's easy to play this out with a deck of cards, where the back of the cards is one side and the face of the cards is the other side, and just play around and see that first turn is a forced win. We can see it with side starters. If they go in the corner, we take it. This plays out to a win. If they go in the center, we've just seen this. We can go in any of 7, 8, or 9. If they play in a nearby side, we take the free square. If they play, not there, if they play in a far corner, we have to play either in the center or to set up the knight formation. Any other move would allow them to secure first. If they go across from us, we only have one move actually to go in the middle, and this is either going to lead to the plus or it's going to lead to a T or Z. Lastly, corner starters. If they take, what do? Well, we don't take here. We take here because we secure. If they go in an adjacent corner, we don't go in the middle square. That lets them secure first. And if we play this out, we can see they're going to manage a tie pretty easily. Instead, we have to not let them secure. Where do we not let them secure? We go in the distance. Now, this can get complicated. We can either end up with the three corners or the knight. Both are kind of tricky. I'm going to come back to this one. In the center, we have to not let them secure. Any move like here or here or here or here lets them secure. So we want to go in one of these three squares again. The slash or the J both work. We haven't looked at the slash yet, so let's look a little at that. If they go here, we can enter the Z or the Q to win. That is true for any of the side moves. All of them allow a Q or a Z. The only thing that doesn't is here. We do not win by taking, even though it secures a card, because in reply, they secure the card they play and a second card. And you can see this plays out to a tie. So we've blown it there. We have to enter the X formation. This is the only winning one. And you can see we don't want to play across from them. That will lead to a tie, because that only secures itself. We want to play next near the side they played in, because that secures two cards, both itself and the one in the corner. And that will lead to a win. So that's the X. If they play in the far corner, we can enter that same setup we just saw, or we can enter the three corners. That's also a viable way to win. And if they play in a far side, we can either enter the J or the knight formation. And that's a way to win. We haven't talked about the knight formation yet, so may as well do so here. Blue has a number of moves they could make. Let's just go through all of them. This is the easiest to refute. You should immediately see what the correct reply is. It's the T. We lock in a card first. If they go here, we also can go for the T, but also winning is to go here or to go in equivalent square of here. Each move locks in a card. They can lock in a card in reply, but note this only locks in itself, and we'll be able to lock in 2 in reply from 5. If they go here, they only lock in one card, right? They're only locking in the card in 4, and we lock in 2 in reply, 9 and 8. We also flip 6, but that's not locked in, so we don't care so much about that. So we have 3 winning moves here. If they go here, we have 2 moves that secure a card. Either one is good enough. We can play here, which looks very similar to a line we just looked at, or we can play in the corner. Both work, both secure a card. If they play in the corner, we only have 1 winning move here, because we only have 1 way to secure a card, and that would be here. And I think that's it for the knight formation. And again, you can always play these out. They secure a card back. We secure 2 cards, one of our own, one of theirs, and we're going to end up winning 6-4. The final formation we haven't talked about is the 3 corners. This one's tricky. It can go a lot of ways. If they play here, our only winning move is the X. Again, if we go here, they secure 2 in reply, and it's not good enough for us. If they go here, our only winning move is also the X from a different order. If we went somewhere like any of the sides, they'd be first to secure a card. And even though we have the capture here, this did end in a win, my bad. Does this work? Oh, this actually works, I'm dumb. All right, well, I suppose this works as well. Okay, in my case. Yeah, because they secure 1, but we get to secure 2 in reply. So, yeah. All right, fair enough. Formational mistake on my part. And that's going to be actually key to the strategy of closed non-combo, is knowing where people think a formation holds, but it actually doesn't. And lastly, if they go in one of the... well, let's say they go in one of the far away sides. Our only winning move is to secure a card. This is the only way to do so. And the most complex version is if they go in a nearby side. And here, it looks like we have a bunch of moves. Here could secure a card. Here it won't take, but often it could. Here secures a card, and here secures a card. And I think this is where people like to play close to the action and secure here, but they actually secure 2 in reply. The best move, and if we play that out, we'll see it's a tie. Here we have our tie. You can always slow down if this is too quick. Here, however, they can only secure 1 in reply, and with either of their best moves, we secure 2, and we win or if they do it this way, we secure 2, and we win. So that's sort of the formational basis. And generally speaking, in closed non-combo, if you are first turn, you should play a formationally correct move. But you won't always have the captures. So you should play formational moves that set you up to have captures. For instance, if you have a capture here and they play in the corner, but you don't have a capture this way, well, we know our positionally correct moves are 7, 8, and 9. So maybe you'd play 9 with a card that sets you up to have a plus or same against the card in 3 that you couldn't take normally. So there's going to be lots of situations where, because you can't always take, you choose your positionally correct move to be the one that lets you have the most ways to follow up in positionally correct ways. Another thing might be you don't have the positionally correct move, and for some reason all the moves in 7, 8, 9 are terrible. So there may be spots where you do end up going in 2, knowing they lock in a card first, but feeling all your cards are upright, facing to the up and to the right, and so they'll be powerful for the resultant game. That is possible. It is likely you're making a mistake when you're doing this, but carefully selecting when not to play the positionally correct move can lead to better play than always going for the positionally desirable move. But in general, I would recommend playing positionally desirable moves whenever you can. Of course, to give an example of when you can't, if they go here and you don't actually have a capture on it, there's only one positionally desirable move. It's to lock in their card. If you don't have that, you're going to have to settle for a move like here, which is, of course, giving up that initial advantage. And you should no longer expect to be playing for a win, but more often at that point, you're playing for a tie. So from first turn's perspective, we want everything to be easy to take and have our cards at the end be really good at capturing stuff and to play positionally correctly. From second turn's perspective, we need to find ways to stop first turn playing positionally correctly. So one thing is, and one thing I was very profitable with, was in this formation setup back in the day, a lot of people would block the in-between square. I knew I'd get an L, either going here or here, and I knew that was a favorable positional result. And so against people who did that, I would almost always, no matter what my hand is, play an adjacent corner because I knew they'd reply badly. And so if I found a weakness in someone's positional game, I would play to exploit that weakness. And so I would try out different types of moves against players to see which ones they'd react badly to, and then try to press that advantage. More subtly, somewhere like here, I would go for this move, right? Because a lot of players would instinctively play this when the best move positionally is here. And so that would be a more complex example, but a similar thing, and also coming out of the adjacent corner. Another thing to do is minimize how many positionally correct moves they can make. So for instance, if I play here, maybe they don't have a capture in 5. But if they have a capture in 4 or 6, as we've seen, both of those are positionally winning too, right? So this move might have a really high outfacing, and maybe I don't think they have a same or plus in 5. It's harder for them to take something in 2 because they specifically need a same or plus with the card in 8 to be able to capture a maximum outfacing number, but they have other ways to win the game. So I'm not really limiting their paths to a win that much. Well, if I play with a high outfacing in 7 or 9, even though it is more likely they can take that because they can play off the card in 1, but they can also play off the wall, I still think it's the preferable option because they have to exactly be able to have the reply in 4 to win. So I give them as few paths to the winning move as I can. And this is really the key to second turn play, is positionally we're lost from the start. In practice, if we give them numbers they can't take or trick them positionally, we have really good chances to tie or even win. And so when I make a move here, if they can't take it, now I'm playing to win, right? And I want to find as many spots like this as I can where I can force them, they must have exactly one card. They must be able to do exactly one thing. And if they can't, I have a really big advantage. And then the other thing, as I said, to do is to exploit these positional errors players make. So these are all examples without having looked at cards. So I have bullied 2 of my friends to play some triple triad, and I'm just going to put in some hands they had. These hands didn't necessarily face off against each other. but just to see with the cards they had and just talk through what some options might be, why one would go in the squares, and how one might play these positions from both sides, switching off the sides. So I am slowly putting in the hands right now. Give me just a moment. I have not looked at these hands in advance, so I don't actually know what, how this game will look, but that's fine. We'll figure it out as we go, and we'll see both hands, but that doesn't matter, because when we're looking at each hand, we'll be considering it from the perspective of the player. Oh, I did not put in the full hands. That's missing a card. What card is it missing? My bad. Ah, Lulu. All right. So we'll boot up again. And all right. So we're going to start from the red turn's perspective. And there's a number of ways to play. I think some people's instinct is to start with the strongest corner they can retake. That's easy to find. This is total value 18. This is the strongest corner that red can retake. The top card, 5A59, can retake from 8, and the 8866 at the bottom can retake from 4. I do not like this way of playing, but I do think it is possible. Like, you can play like this, it's fine. I don't think it's optimal, but I think it's also worth trying out different ways of playing and seeing how they work. I think the big advantage of this is it might be a card Blue's hand just can't deal with at all. Maybe they can't take from 4, and they have no way to set up to take from 4. And if that's the case, often they're going to be in desperation early and not able to really address what you're doing. The downside is we're now sort of committed to 2 cards in our hand, right? We kind of need to hold on to this, because if they take, we have to recapture with this. And if they take the other way, we have to recapture with this. And because it has high numbers out facing, it's unlikely we'll have multiple recaptures. So we're really locked into holding these 2 cards until late, and they may not be, as the game happens to play out, the 2 cards we really want to hold on to until late. Now, maybe in this hand they are. These 2 cards are very redundant, and so it's unlikely we'll want both of them in the long run. But it locks us in. It's going to really limit our options later. And also, from first turn's perspective, we want things to be easy to take. If everything is easy to take, it will be easy for us to play positionally correctly. And if the game goes positionally correctly and we can take at every point we want to, we're going to win. So I do not think this is a good first move, but it is how some people play. And if you want that to be your style, that's okay. I think it's a reasonable idea, but not the best for this rule set. Now, another thing one might do is the half-strong corner. Now, this locks us in a lot less, because we have 4 different cards. All of our cards can retake from 2, and so we only have to hold on to this card for 6 in case we need a capture there. So I like this a lot more, because it gives us a lot more options down the road. Now, this might actually be the starter I like most. We can also go the kind of full-on weak corner, the thing we can retake both ways most easily. All of our cards can recapture from 6. Half our cards can recapture from 2. This is going to be the easiest card for us to take back. So this is another idea, the weak corner. So we have these 3 possibilities. We could play the strong corner, the half-strong, the weak corner. We should also think a bit about which directions we're strong. Our hand is clearly pretty bad going left. We have 2 4s to the left, a 6, a 7, a 9, and a lot more power going right. Pretty good power going both up and down. So we generally would like to start, I think, on the right side of the board, so that the rest of our cards will play well as the game is directed, because we want them to have captures late. So another move that's possible may be this, but we only have 1 recapture from 6. So my instinct would be maybe this. We're a little committed to holding on to 8866, but it also gets a card out of my hand that's really redundant. And I'd probably use this over this, just because this is a 7 instead of a 6, which is probably slightly more powerful, and plays off my hand better, as the 7-4 can play off the 7 in my hand. But either one's probably fine. or something like this is a weak corner. That's if we're going to start with a corner. What if we wanted to start with a side? There are kind of two ways people start with sides. One is, do I have something with a high number facing out that can recapture both ways? So one way people start with sides is they notice, aha, this is a 6 and 4 to the left and right. This card to its left has an 8 and 7. It can capture both ways with the 10 out. So I'll go here with the point that if they take, I can recapture with the 10 out. And this has some benefit, but it sort of gives up an L for free, right? From the second turn's player perspective, if they go somewhere like here, they're obviously the first to lock in a card. Also, if they could take us from 6, that would be another way they could lock in a card. So the other way people do this, and I think that way is not very good for this rule set because it gives up to the opponent an advantageous position right off the jump. Another way people do it is, and actually we'll play the same move for this, is, I'm just throwing a random move for them. I have a 10 down. So anything they can put in the slide along squares with a 9 or less facing up, I can take. And so if they do something like this, I'm going to immediately get a favorable position because I'm the first to lock in a card. And if they have a 10 up, I have this 8-8-6-6, and potentially I can get that favorable setup there too. The one worry is if they go here, but 50% of the time, if they decide to go with the 10 out, I will have it covered. I think this makes a little more sense. And in this case, we could combine both ideas. This move works for both ideas. I still don't love side starters, but I do think their biggest benefit is that you can lock in whether the game is up, down, or side to side. If we start in one of these two squares, the game just will end up being, on average, much more side to side, right? If something like this happens, right, we have locked in this game where we have these two side to side squares paired up top, and these 3 empty squares on the bottom. Side-to-side action is going to be the key action. And similarly, if we start here, we're going to make the game much more likely to be up-down in most variations. So if we have a hand that is much better going up and down, has a lot of good up-down cards, or a hand much better side-to-side, that is something that might draw you to a side starter. Last starter type is a center starter. And a center starter is kind of the easiest to play positionally well off of, right? They go somewhere and we have options in 6, 9, and 8, and we can kind of pick the weakest corner, the easiest thing for us to take back. Maybe here in this case, because you may notice our 5A, 5-9 has the double capture this way, and also, if needed, has the double capture this way with the plus. And it captures the 10 from below with the plus wall. So maybe we'd go for a big thing, specifically because we have one card that can cover both sides. Then it's not a pain to hold on to it, because as soon as they occupy either one of these two squares, we're ready to occupy the other with this. If they never occupy either, we save it for the end, and we're happy because it's going to be good in either of the two squares left. So it's one of those things where if you have two cards to cover two squares, like after that strong starter we looked at, right, where we have two different cards to take back in 4 and 8, that's a pretty big problem. But if we have one card that's good in both squares, that's not so bad a spot. That card is probably just going to be really good and ready to go in either of those spots whenever the opponent plays the other one. And why are these paired squares? Because as soon as they play in one of them, there is an opportunity to lock in a card, so we're very likely to play in the other. Even if they played in this one without taking, we'd probably want to secure and lock in our card. Just this time, if they don't take, we're given more choice how to do so. And this is why capturing, even when it doesn't secure, does matter. Because if they capture, they force us to use this card to secure. If they play next to us and don't capture, we can use any card in our hand. On average, having 4 cards to choose between, or 3 or whatever, depending on the point in the game, it's going to be better to have choice which cards to use and which to hold on to that might play well later. While if you capture, it will force a card out of their hand that may or may not have been their choice in a vacuum, and potentially will leave them with less good cards later. So there is reason to take stuff, even if it's not securing, because it will make their hand more forced into certain actions and give them less room to figure out, yes, I want to hold on to this card for later. So we've talked a bunch of first turn's perspective. What about second turn's perspective? Let us play a starter, specifically this one. From second turn's perspective, we need to challenge first turn. We either need to figure out where they're making a positional mistake. So for instance, in a previous example, maybe we go here and they really like to take that in between square, and how exactly would I do it with this hand? Let's go here. And we have an L formation. And we've already locked in a card a second turn, and if they give us this, we should be very happy. And so if we know they are likely to do that, we should exploit this. This should be our go-to plan, is right, we're going to play as exploitatively as possible. Why did I pick this specific L? It's because I wanted to make a threat in 5. I wanted it to be, if they go here, that we can play in 5, lock in 2 more cards, and have a great situation. Or if they go here, I want to force them to go 5, and then we can see I have 2 different moves that are viable. Probably this one happens to be better here, just because, yeah, probably this one's better. But anyways, the point is we were the first to lock in. It's pretty easy for this to head towards a tie, or even win if they fail to capture again later. And that's not hard to imagine happening here. Maybe they should have done it this way. And then we sort of have to make a guess. We could go here actually and win, but we don't know their hand. But this would be a classic closed guessing spot. Is it if they take a 5 and a 7, they win? Or if they take, because we have no capture on the card in 3, or is it harder for them to take a 5 and a 7 or a 10 and a 7? Or a 7 and a 7? Well, clearly the 10 and 7 should be hardest, so we probably do go here. But it is in general preferable to play here to here, because this one, they play off 2 cards and 2, I guess it's about the same actually. So this is probably the better way to do it, and does in fact win in this case. But going back, so the reason I picked this L was because it was the only L that gave us a threat in 5 with this plus. So we have 4 captures. We have this one, but I have no 3 gap, right? 10 and 7, that's 3 apart, so I need my top number to be 3 higher than the left, have a plus. My hand doesn't have it. Similarly, there's a 10 right from the card in 4, a 7 up from the card in 8. I need a 3 gap between down and left. I don't have it in my hand. This card, 6 and 10, I need a 4 gap. I don't have it. 6 and 10, I need a 4 gap. I do have it, so I have a big threat in 5. So if I know someone will fall for this, this is what I'll play for. This is how I'll set up an L. The most important feature of an L is setting up that threat in 5. What if they know not to block, though? Well, part of the reason I played this adjacent corner is it has a few points. One is, it is a very strong corner that I can retake. And I said I thought the strong corner was a mistake for first turn. Because I think what first turn wants is easy things to capture, because first turn is last turn, and it'll just want easy captures. If first turn, if everything goes positionally right, as I've said so many times, first turn wins. Second turn, thus, needs to make things really hard to take. One thing we can do is just trick them into a bad move, right? If they go here, we suddenly already switch to playing for a win. However, we also need to make things hard to take. This is our strongest corner, a 10 and a 9. This is the hardest card for their hand to take, and we can already see red cannot take it from 2. Even better, it sets us up to be able to take their starter from 4, which is a capture we did not initially have. I think one kind of heuristic for dealing with an opponent starter, corner specifically, is if we can take it both ways already, we have freedom. We can go whichever move we think messes with them the most. So that could be a strong corner somewhere, or it could be, I know this player always responds badly to far sides, I'll try that to throw them. Maybe that will get them off their game. Maybe they don't understand the positional strategy there. But we can't take both ways here. If we can take neither way, the first square I'll check is 5, because 5 is the only square that can set up potentially against both ways. If we can take one way, and this is the current case, we can take one way, I really like to play to make sure we can take the other. The easiest way to do this is this adjacent corner play. Here, we have set it up so that this card can take with a plus, this card can take with a plus, even this card can take with a plus. We have a recapturable corner. It sets us up to be able to capture their corner better, and hopefully we can get an L setup, which we just saw and is very good for second turn. So now we're switching back to first turn. We've made a starter I don't particularly like, but the situation isn't so bad. We have a very good card for 4 and for 8. Do we want to jump into those immediately? No, of course not. If we go 4, that gives them the L as seen. If we go 8, that gives them also an L with a really nice position for that. We don't want to do that. What we know is we'll have last turn. Last turn, if 4 and 8 are left open, they'll play one, we'll play the other, and we'll have captures. So we're pretty happy about that. We don't have a capture in 2. And we know our positionally correct move is in 3, 6, or 9. The only square that can possibly set us up to have a capture in 2 is to go in 3. So that's the first place I'd look. Now I don't want to use this card. I know I want to hold on to it. And it doesn't set us up in 2. 9 is the same as 9, so we need an even number going left and right. We don't have it. This card, we'd need 5 higher going to the right than going towards the 9. We don't have it. Same thing. We still don't have it. This one, we need 3 higher going to the right than going to the left. We do have that. The 8-7-A4 has that, so we could play here setting up a plus. And I quite like this move, because then, again, we have these paired squares. So I'm just going to throw a random move out for them. This card is good for here and here. This card is now as a plus here and is good for capturing here. And these paired squares are great because we know as soon as they occupy one, we occupy the other, and we're going to lock in a card. As soon as they occupy one of these 2 squares, we occupy the other, and we lock in the card. And the game's all about those lock-ins. So I quite like this move. We could go for the 3 corners. My instinct would be to go for the 3 corners here rather than here, because here sets up better against their card. This could also be viable, but it wouldn't give us that capture in 2, which we quite want. Note, I'd be hesitant to use this card if we still needed it to take back in 4, but we have another card now that can take back in 4, so we don't have to hold on to this one so much anymore. Another move I want to throw out as a possibility is the knight formation. Specifically, this move doesn't set us up against anything, but it's a card we can recapture. We have multiple ways to recapture it from below with plus wall. We have a way to capture it from above. And it would be another positionally correct option. If they played somewhere like here, we couldn't take them, but we could still play a positionally good move. But here you can see where second turn can get first turn in trouble. We only have one positionally good move. We only have one lock-in. If they go... let's say even here, right? Nothing they take will lock it in, so they don't really need to take anything. We suddenly have no captures. And so we have played positionally well to this point, but we now need to lock in things, and we can't really. So here, we can only lock in the card in 8, which we should do. And now here, blue doesn't have a capture, so actually let's play a slightly different move. Let's play this here. We lock in the card in 8. Blue is a capture, and we can only tie if we can capture it. If we couldn't capture this, first turn would even lose. So second turn successfully built up this 9 wall that first turn was not able to capture, and eventually was unable to play the positionally desirable way while capturing at all needed points. So you can see how creating those difficulties can create a problem. So one way to do so might be here, but again, if red had captures in 2 or 5, red would probably be in pretty good shape. The problem is they happen to have very low left power, and that's mostly a mistake of the starter. Why start in the bottom left when you're really bad going left? Another thing blue could do, and my favorite choice here, would be to go in here or here with a 10 outwards. Because as we talked about earlier, unless they can take that card, red will fall behind. In this case, they happen to have this card covered 2 ways. This is the same. This is a plus wall, and happen to not have this card covered either way. But you can see why this would be a good option, because if they can't take it, blue is immediately ahead. And if they can take it, the game still continues, right? Let's say they take it this way, right? We know first turn really wants to hold on to this card, so they'll probably take it this way. And we build our 9 wall, and again, red is out of leftward power. And again, I think that's the fault of the starter here. But as is, blue gets to a position where they cannot lose. Now here red is a tie. They have a pretty good endgame card. but blue cannot lose. They can tie multiple ways. This is a little riskier because if red had the double capture now, red would win. So I would probably play it this way just to make sure blue can't lose and red needs to have a good card left to tie. Note, it was very important for red to play this card in 5 rather than this card, because in this position, we can't do the positionally desirable thing, which is stick something in 5 that locks in the card in 4. So we want to use the card, we want to go in 5 because it still locks in 2. We got to lock in things when we can. And we want to use the card that will be less good in the last 2 squares. This card's obviously pretty terrible in 8, and especially 9. Well, this card is very good in those squares. So we're certainly going to play it this way, and we will manage the tie with that. So I think the best move here was 8-8-6-6 here, setting red up to have this threatened 2. Now, how could blue play? Well, there's a lot of ways to play here for blue, and I think this depends. I think there's a lot of stylistic things you can find here, where, as we've seen, any of these moves can be good, or can be tricky to meet. One thing about a move in 5 is now, for instance, this square in 4 has 3 10s facing it. Red's only positionally correct move is to go in 9, and if blue now forces the final move of the game, or tries to force the final move of the game into 6, it's unlikely red's going to have the triple capture, right? The 8-8-6-6 actually would if they still had that, but that kind of card with 2 sets of double numbers is very rare. Not very rare, but pretty rare. And so you could see if blue, for instance, starts in the opposite side from that. Now we know red going here is positionally a mistake. This gives, I guess, an easy tie this way, right? Where red can only capture 2 at the end. That was a plus, by the way, in 8. And so that's a tie. And so they're supposed to go in 2 or 8. They'll probably go in 2 because they know 5A, 5-9 is their endgame sweeper, but here it can't quite capture that 10. So one way to try to play for a tie would be to aim for the X and make sure there's a specific square they have trouble playing in. And why did I start going here? Because this is the only one where they can't block that square immediately. That's the square I want to force them into ending on, because that's the square where it's toughest for them to have enough captures. And the only way for me to force it is to play in the opposite. If I play next to it, they might go there early when they don't need to have all the captures. They only need to have the capture on the corner securing that. I hope that makes sense. And if I play here, yes, they could go there, but this is positionally a mistake because it secures 1 card while either of these moves secure 2. So at that point, we'd be playing for the tie or for the win anyway, because they've already failed to play positionally correctly. So we could play that way. We can also play the 4 corners. That's viable. Another thing to do is start playing like this, with these 9s facing out. Again, we know that's a problem because we can see red's hand. But even if we didn't, having this many strong numbers facing to the right, red is likely to run out of left-facing power to top that. And it might be possible to get them to not have a capture when they need it. Furthermore, they might make a positional mistake. This can be a very desirable move, but if blue has the capture in 5, blue is ahead. Here blue doesn't, so red would get away with it, or could get away with it. They might not. But in general, 2 is actually a mistake, and the right move is we know these squares were paired. It was to grab this square, but in this case, red can't really do that because their remaining cards are so bad going left that they cannot play the positionally desirable move. And they should play the positionally undesirable move and hope blue doesn't have the capture in 5. So that gets into the kind of complexities of making sure your remaining cards are good. And if someone gives you enough challenges, sometimes they'll force you into trying to challenge back by saying, okay, I know my correct move's in 8, but my cards are so bad after I go in 8, right? They're so bad going the kind of up-left path the game will have, that I'm going to make the second best move, which I know is a mistake, but it's only a mistake if you have 5. And if blue doesn't have 5, red is in decent shape again. This gets to one kind of last strategy. If let's say we chuck a 5-starter, 5 starters are fine, and blue plays, guess they can't really defend the strong corner, blue plays a move. Or like actually, let's say we start with corner, and blue plays this far side play, random move, but doesn't really matter the specifics. We know what our positionally correct move is. It's either 5 or 9. And reasons we'd go in those squares, we're good at recapturing those squares. We know we're on first turn, so we want to have stuff that's easy for us to recapture. We don't care so much if they can capture it. We just want to make sure we can capture it back. So a normal move might be something like this, where we have 8-7, A4 can recapture from 4, and every card in the hand can recapture from 8. A move like this makes sense to me. But another way to play it is to say, I'm gonna make a bet. I'm gonna take a risk. Maybe I'm gonna go here. I know if you have a move in 2, you now have an advantage. But if you don't, I have a huge advantage now. Similar would be to go in 9 or 7, saying, if you take this, I know you get to lock in a card, but if you don't have it, I think I have a really big advantage. And this is another type of move that is useful to have in your repertoire, because if you look at moves in 5 and in 9 and you happen not to like them, or you find them complicated and hard to analyze, another way to play is to try to challenge. Note, we don't challenge with strong corners, because strong corners lock us into having multiple cards, and we can't lock them in very easily. If I play a strong corner and they go in 5, maybe they don't have one of these squares, 4 or 8. In this case, they don't have 4. But I don't know that. It's very risky for me to play an 8 when they've just set up to play in 4. The odds of me guessing right that they don't have it is very low. I'm going to have to play around it, and I don't have one card that's good in both squares, so I'm going to have to hold on to 2 cards, which is going to make my resulting play really awkward, and maybe make the last turn really hard, because I'll have to have used one of those cards before the last turn, and then they can just play in the square that I used to have a card for and now just use, and I'm stuck with the card that's good on the other square, but they don't let me play that square. So playing a strong corner and kind of bluffing with it doesn't make much sense. However, playing a single out-facing number, if they don't have it, we can lock in next turn an 8. In fact, if they don't have it, we don't even have to necessarily block in next turn with 8, because they should go in 8 if they have a capture there. They should definitely go in 8. If they go somewhere else, odds are they just don't have it, and we could start grabbing other cards. Sadly, we don't have the capture in 2. We could lock in an 8, and locking in an 8 is a good move, but we're not actually forced to, because we really have strong evidence they don't have it, and that's a pretty compelling read. So I've talked about a lot of stuff, but I kind of want to recap the main ethos of both turns. First turn, we want to play positionally correctly when we can, but it is often really important to have good cards left for captures at the end. And it's probably better to have good cards left at the end than it is to stay positionally correct if you're stuck with really bad cards for later. So that's the main time you're going to move away from the positionally correct move. First turn wants things to be easy to take. First turn loves it when second turn plays weak out-facing things. It's easy for them to take. They don't have to worry about it. They have lots of options about which cards to use because so many of their cards are going to be good at capturing later. And first turn really needs a good understanding of the formations. Second turn is looking to challenge. Second turn has to make it tough. They can make it tough either by tricking first turn into a bad positional move, or by having stuff with high out-facing values that just make it tough for first turn to keep having it. And if first turn fails to have it, second turn suddenly playing for a win. And if they fail to have it twice, second turn is gonna win if second turn plays well. One other thing is these bluff moves are kind of important. They're not really bluff moves, but they're do you have it moves. You can play the positionally correct move, but the one argument for playing a non-positionally correct move is saying, do you have it? But when you make these moves, they have to be made well. For instance, you might think, this 8-6-A4 that we've already played has a 10 down. If I play next to it, they're forced to try to take this, right? But they're not. They have another square that we've just given them for free, right? They have a free secure move. We're not asking them the question, we're giving them a free move, right? Playing here, their only move that could secure is exactly an 8. If they don't have it, we have a big advantage. Playing a move like this might look like it's asking a similar question, but it isn't. So if we're going to do that, we have to pick our spots well. I prefer to try to play positionally correctly, but I think this is not a bad strategy, and mixing up both can be a good way of playing. But usually the way to do it is to find something where for some reason somewhere has one out facing side, and you give them the highest number you can there, and the question is, can they plus wall it or not? And if they can't, you're in great shape. And second turn can follow that strategy too, right? If first turn starts with a strong side, second turn could play this card here or here and just say, do you have it? And if first turn doesn't have it, like here, second turn, first turn probably now has to recapture. Second turn can set up an L, and should set up an L where they have the threat in 5. They can set up an L in 4 or 6. You can try to figure out which Ls you'd go for. One that jumps out at me is this, because we now have 7A57, and blue would be crushingly ahead. Are there any other good setups? This card could play off a 6, but we don't have one. Or it could play off a 5, so this would be another really good L. Because if they go here, we now are way, way ahead. Any other good setups? No, I don't think so. So there are 2 good L's here, right? Here or here. Again, the main key is to set up the threat in 5. So there's a lot going on in closed non-combo. I certainly didn't cover everything. And I think the thought process on both turns should make sense. First turn, easy captures, set up as many captures as we can, make sure to be positionally correct. Second turn, challenge them. Always be challenging them. Find ways to force them to take high things. And I wrote a definitive primer to close non-combo, and there I focused on positional correct moves. And the main thing for positionally correct is how can I secure and how can I deny them securing? Which is why, after moves here and here, we don't go here, we don't go here, we don't go here, we go here, here, or here. Because those are the moves that don't let second turn secure. We have no moves that secure ourselves. If they had taken us, we would secure, right? So we would play here. So always be securing. Don't let them secure. Try to keep cards that are good for later and try to direct the game in ways that are favorable. I think this is a much better starter than this because this directs the game down left. Left is not where red wants to go. It also is a hard card for red to take back, so they're really locked into multiple things. This is a much easier card for red to take back. It directs the game much more how red wants it. So a move like this, I think, is going to be beneficial. I wanted to show actually one more thing. So I'm going to kind of throw cards in random squares. But out of the T formation, I think there can be some question of where red should go here. They have a few choices. The one thing we can rule out is 7. Either card in 7 secures nothing. We want to secure. But there is a question, should we go in 1 or should we go in 8? This would be the card we use in 8. And we should look at this by calculating a little. If we go in 1, we don't really care that we flip the card in 4 in general, but we do in specific because our 5A59 cannot flip that card from 7. So it is good to have it flipped already because otherwise it's never going to flip to us. And if we go in 1 and they go in 8, we're going to be really glad we flipped that card in 4 because we wouldn't have it flipped otherwise. So if we go 1, we're up 6-4. If they go in 8, we have a 10 facing right. So unless they can go in 8 with a 10 to the left, we're going to win. If they go in 7, they're going to capture the card in 4. It's 5-5. We already know we can capture 5 from 8. So we win 6-4 whether or not we can capture their card. So if we play our move in 1, we know their only tie is to go in 8, capturing 9 with a 10 to the left. What if we play this way? Well, it's 5-5. If they go in 1, they don't capture anything. And we know we have a capture at the end, so we're going to win 6-4. If they go in 7, we go in 1 and we have the double capture and we win 6-4. So in this case, this move here wins no matter what their hand is. No matter what. And it's worth pausing and like making sure that's understood. Because if they go in 1, we know we have one more capture. This move makes it 5-5. That will make it 6-4. If they go in 7, they can take a 6-4 lead, but we have a double capture in 1 and win by force. However, in general, in this kind of position, I think you should look to go in 1. I think 1 is going to be the move on average more than 8. 8866 is a really perfect card to be left with. So let's imagine a slightly different version. We have no capture in 1. Now, this move doesn't work at all. We lose. However, this move, we know we want to keep the card better for later. Our side-to-side card is definitely going to be better. At least gives us a chance. Actually, I guess we have to use this card. That's a shame. But it does work here. But so this card in general, except that 5A59 has no capture in 7 of 4. So this will be the better option because it's not so much that it flips the card in 4. It's that if we play this way, the card in 4 is basically dead to us. So even if they play something in 8 we can take, we still lose. So we should play this way because if they go in 7, we are going to lose unless they for some randomly have an 8 to the right, which we would plus. But they're more likely to go in 8 because if they go in 7 and we have the double capture, we win. So it's much riskier for them to play that. This way, they play safe, they guarantee at least a tie, but we can capture anything a 6 down or a 9 because of the plus. And so I think, I'm saying this so badly, but I think in general, 8 occasionally wins by force, but usually out of these formations, we should see the top 2 squares as paired and the bottom 2 squares as paired. There's a secondary pair of the top and bottom squares, where this we can play here, and in the other case this was a forced win. But usually, if they play in one of the top squares, even if we don't have a capture or don't have a capture we're happy with, we probably play in the other top square and then fight on the other paired squares. And seeing paired squares like this, I think, is a really useful thing and helpful for playing the late game better. And I think so in the T, the main paired squares are these top 2 and the bottom 2. Just throwing random cards in. Out of the Q, the main paired squares are going to be these 2 squares and these 2 squares. And if they play in one of them, you should probably on average play in the other. Again, there's a secondary pairing of squares. If they play here, you can also play here, but usually the better move is still going to be here. And finally, out of the Z, if we had gone here, again, there's these 2 paired squares and these 2 paired squares. There's a secondary pairing of squares of this square in the far corner and this square in the other side. But the main pairing of squares are the next to each other ones, and that's usually where you want to play, even if you don't have the perfect card there. So that might be all I wanted to get out. Complicated game, hard game to play well, but hopefully this gives some tools.